almost surely this debt will not be paid by our generation. It is going to be paid by future generations.
Are we all digging a hole of debt that is going to be very, very difficult to climb out of again, because many of these stimulus packages don't even have any promise of repayment?
What is worrisome is we're not making that calculus that, in fact, we have to obviously preserve the productive capacity of the economy because that's going to be handed over to the next generations. But we also need to ask, well, how much pain are we willing to take ourselves? Because if we assume just because we can borrow, we borrow in such a way as to preclude all future borrowing by future generations because we've handed to them such a pile of debt. That's not reasonable and fair to them because they will have their problems, they will have their pandemics, they will have their financial crises for which we've left no borrowing space. And also we've left them our legacy problems, paying for our retirement, which many industrial countries haven't funded, as well as the fact that we've left the biggest sort of issue facing the globe, climate change, unaddressed, which will require enormous investments. So I think even countries that have the borrowing capacity have to be careful. Many families are going to slip from the lower middle class into poverty, and they're scared. Some of it may come down to issues like, do they have enough to eat? And that's worrisome because unless we see a revival of economies, a revival of jobs, this is going to be a big issue as we progress. And you talked about services earlier. In countries that are developed, a lot of people can stay at home and do their jobs. In developing countries, far fewer can. So this virus is sort of an anti-Robin Hood. It hits the poor even harder on every front, and then the rich.
So much of the incredible progress of lifting people out of poverty over the last 20 years, is that going to be knocked back?
Absolutely. The worry here is not of a year or two, but of a lost decade. I mean, think about a family which has to pull its kids out of school because they can't afford the school fees anymore because they're trying to put food on the table. They will never go back to school. And that's condemning the next generation to a greater poverty than would have been the case if pandemic hadn't occurred.